Park Jin stood at the window of his small apartment, watching the gray ships hover over Seoul. 3 months had passed since they came. 3 months since the last human voice was heard on Earth. The aliens called themselves the Silence. No one knew why they did what they did. They did not kill. They did not destroy cities. They simply took away the human voice. Jin turned away from the window. His daughter, Lee Soo, sat on the floor with their dog. The dog was large, a mix of Jindo and Mastiff breeds. His name was Da. Before the aliens came, Da had been just a pet. Now he was much more. Soo. Jin mouthed the word, no sound coming out. The neural dampeners made sure of that. Every human on Earth wore one now, a small silver disc at the base of their skull. It stopped the brain from sending signals to make vocal sounds. Sue looked up at her father and nodded. At 12 years old, she had adapted faster than most adults. She made a quick hand sign, then pointed to the notebook beside her. Jin walked over and picked up the notebook. Sue had been drawing pictures of mouths, throats, and sound waves. Next to them were drawings of Da, with lines showing how the dog's throat worked when it barked. Jin smiled. Before the invasion, he had been a linguistics professor. Now his knowledge was both useless and more valuable than ever. He sat down beside his daughter and pointed to her drawings. Sue made a series of hand movements, a mix of old sign language and new gestures they had created as a family. She was trying to say something about Da's barks. As if on cue, Dad let out a low woof. The sound echoed in the quiet apartment. Human voices were gone, but animal sounds remained. The aliens didn't care if dogs barked or cats meowed. Jin nodded in understanding. He took a pencil and drew a pattern of dots and lines under Sue's pictures. It was a simple code they had developed, matching dog sounds to human meanings. A knock came at the door. 3 quick taps, then 2 slow ones, their neighbor's signal. Jin stood and opened the door. Kim Hannah stood in the hallway. Before the Silence came, she had been a veterinarian at the Seoul Animal Center. Now she worked with the community's pets, making sure they stayed healthy. But lately, she and Jin had been working on something else too. Hannah held up her tablet. On it was written, "It worked with my C8." Jin's eyes widened. He gestured for her to come inside. Dae went to Hannah, tail wagging. She patted his head, then showed Jin and Sue a video on her tablet. In it, her cat was making unusual mewing patterns, long and short sounds that seemed intentional, not random. Sue clapped her hands silently, excitement clear on her face. Jin quickly wrote on a paper, "How many words?" Hannah held up 4 fingers. Outside, the hum of an alien patrol ship grew louder. They all froze. Dae's ears perked up, and a low growl formed in his throat. The ship's lights swept past their window, casting strange shadows across the room. When it passed, Jin let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He wrote again, "Shoujo US." For the next hour, Hannah demonstrated how she had trained her cat to make specific sounds for specific meanings. It was basic, but it worked. Food, door, danger, and friend, each had a distinct meow. Jin looked at Da. The big dog watched them with intelligent eyes. If a cat could learn 4 words, how many could a dog learn? How complex could the sounds be? As night fell over Silent Seoul, Jin began to plan. The aliens had taken human voices, but they had overlooked something important. Humans were not the only creatures on Earth capable of making sounds, and where there was sound, there could be language. In the quiet apartment, while the alien ships patrolled outside, a small spark of hope began to grow. They could not speak, but perhaps they could teach their beasts to speak for them. Dae howled softly as the moon rose, and this time, Jin heard more than just an animal sound. He heard possibility. 3 weeks had passed since Hannah showed Jin her cat's special meows. Now, Jin's living room looked like a classroom. Papers with drawings of sound waves covered one wall. On another wall hung charts showing dog mouth positions. Jin watched as Day sat alert in the center of the room. Sue knelt beside the big dog, one hand on his back. Jin raised his right hand with 3 fingers up, then lowered 2. Dad barked once, then twice in quick order, then let out a low growl. Jin nodded and wrote on his tablet, "PRF 8 Keat." Hana clapped her hands silently. In the corner, her cat Moon watched with yellow eyes. 4 more people sat around the room, each with a dog beside them. All the dogs were large breeds, a German Shepherd, a Labrador, a Husky, and another mixed breed that looked part wolf. Jin stood and held up a new card. On it was a simple drawing of an alien ship. He pointed to the card, then made a circular motion with his finger. All 5 dogs in the room began to bark in a pattern. 2 short barks, 1 long howl, 3 short barks. The sound was loud enough to hear clearly, but not so loud it would attract attention from outside. Park Bin, the owner of the German Shepherd, smiled wide and gave a thumbs up. His dog, Sook, had learned the pattern fastest. Jin wrote on a large board for everyone to see, 20 signals now. Need 50 minimum. The others nodded. 20 signals was good progress, but not enough for real communication. They needed more complex sounds. Sue tugged on her father's sleeve and pointed to Da. The big dog was making an odd movement with his mouth. Jin watched closely as Dai seemed to shape his mouth in different ways while barking. Jin's eyes widened. He quickly wrote, "SU. Make him do that again." Sue placed her hand on Dai's head and closed her eyes. The room went quiet except for the sound of breathing. Then Dai began to bark, but these were not normal barks. The sounds changed in tone and shape. They almost sounded like vowels. Everyone in the room stared. Hannah moved closer, her medical training making her eyes sharp as she watched Dai's throat and mouth. "He's changing the shape of his vocal tract," she wrote, "like humans do for different vowel sounds." Jin felt his heart beat faster. If dogs could make different vowel sounds on command, they could create many more signals, maybe even something close to words. He wrote quickly, "SU. How are you telling him to do this?" Sue shrugged. She pointed to her head, then to Dai, and made a connecting motion with her hands. Jin understood. Somehow his daughter had formed a deeper connection with Dai than just hand signals. The neural dampeners that blocked human speech might have had an unexpected side effect, strengthening the mental bond between humans and animals. Jin had heard stories about this. People claiming they could feel what their pets wanted. Most had dismissed these as imagination. But now Jin wondered, what if the dampeners, by shutting down one form of communication, had opened another? Outside, the sky darkened as evening approached. Alien patrol ships would be making their rounds soon. Jin signaled for everyone to prepare to leave. As the group packed up their notes and prepared their dogs for the journey home, Bin approached Jin with his tablet. On it was written, "My brother works at DAE Zoo. The wolves there. TA warrior. AC Taing strange too." Jin read the message twice. Then he wrote back, "Bring him tomorrow." After everyone left, Jin sat with Sue and Dad in the quiet apartment. He stroked the big dog's fur and thought about what had happened. They had started with simple barks and howls, basic signals. But now something deeper was emerging. Sue leaned against her father and made a small hand gesture that meant hope. Jin nodded. The aliens had taken their voices, thinking they had silenced humanity. They didn't understand that on Earth, humans were not the only ones who could speak. As if reading his thoughts, Day lifted his head and let out a soft sound. Not quite a bark, not quite a howl, but something in between. Something new. Something the silence would never expect. Jin had never been to the old subway tunnels before the aliens came. Now he walked carefully down the dark path, with Dad leading the way. Sue held his hand tight. Behind them, Hannah and Ben followed with their animals. The tunnels had been closed for years, even before the silence arrived. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the air smelled of rust and dirt. But today, these forgotten places had become important. Here, far from the alien ships, people could meet safely. After 10 minutes of walking, they saw a faint light ahead. As they got closer, Jin could make out a large room. Once, it had been a subway station. Now it was something else. At least 30 people stood in groups around the room. Each group had one or more dogs with them. Some people wore old police or military clothes. Others looked like regular people. Teachers, workers, students. All of them had the silver neural dampeners on their necks, just like Jin. A tall man approached them. He had a stern face with a scar across his cheek. A large German shepherd walked at his side. The dog's eyes seemed to study Jin's group carefully. The man held up a tablet that read, "I am Choi Tai, former K9 police. You must be Park Jin." Jin nodded and wrote back, "This is my DUGTERSU, our DUGDAE, and my COLEAGUEs, HANA and BN." Ta gestured for them to follow. He led them to a corner where maps were spread out on old tables. The maps showed Seoul and the surrounding areas. Red marks showed where alien checkpoints were. Blue marks showed safe paths through the city. Tay typed quickly on his tablet. "We have groups in FIV districts now. Each group has at least 3 doggy teams." Jin looked around the room again. Now he noticed how organized everything was. Some people were training dogs to respond to hand signals. Others were drawing maps or checking equipment. This was not just a meeting. It was a resistance base. Tai introduced his dog. "This is Maru. He goes with Nemni and THE Police Force." Maru was well-trained and alert. The dog stood straight and watched everything with intelligent eyes. Jin could see why Tai had been a K9 officer. Ta continued typing. "Your work with voice patterns is exactly what we need. We can send the messages, but it's slow. If doggies can speak for US." Jin nodded. He understood. The resistance needed better communication. Written messages were fine for planning, but in dangerous situations, they needed something faster. Sue tugged on Jin's sleeve and pointed to Dai and Maru. The 2 dogs were sniffing each other, circling slowly. It seemed like a normal dog greeting, but Jin noticed something odd. They moved in perfect sync, almost like a dance. Tan noticed it too. He typed, "The DAMVNERS did something to US. Changed our connection with them." Jin wrote, "My DUGTER, CN DAE, to make complex sounds." Tay's eyes widened. He looked at Sue with new interest. Then he typed, "Shechodoremi." Sue knelt beside Dai and placed her hand on his head. She closed her eyes. Dad looked at her, then opened his mouth and began to make a series of sounds, guttural noises that shifted in tone and pitch. The room grew quiet as people turned to watch. Even the other dogs seemed interested, ears perked forward. When Dai finished, Tai typed slowly, "In the police, we trained for years to get doggies to FOLOVTOPMPLX coanandas. What your DUGTER just did." He shook his head, amazed. Jin wrote, "The aliens think they silence the US, but they may have GIV in US something in you." Ta nodded. He waved over several other people, former dog trainers, veterinarians, and even a woman who had worked with dolphins at the marine park. For the next hour, they shared what they had learned about animal communication since the invasion. As they talked, Jin realized just how big this could be. It wasn't just about dogs barking messages. It was about a whole new way for humans and animals to connect. That night, as they left the tunnel, Jin looked up at the alien ships hovering silently above the city. For the first time since they came, he didn't feel helpless. The silence had taken their voices, but their beasts were learning to howl in their place. Jin woke to the sound of Day's low growl. The dog stood by the window, ears forward, body tense. Outside, the early morning light showed 3 alien ships moving slowly between buildings. This was not the normal patrol pattern. Jin quickly woke Sue and signaled for her to stay quiet. Not that they could make noise anyway, but even the sound of fast movement could draw attention. Hana appeared at their door minutes later. She held up her tablet. HFY Stories searching buildings in CCT 4. Something, APNED. Jin felt cold fear creep up his spine. Sector 4 was where one of the Resistance's dog training centers had been set up. Had the aliens found it? He looked at his own tablet and saw messages from other Resistance members. The news was not good. The Silence had raided 3 locations overnight. They had taken people and dogs. The door opened again, and Tai entered with Maru. The former police officer's face was grim. He typed quickly, "The Silence found dog training equipment. THEYR, starting to notice PATT. Jin nodded. They had known this might happen. The aliens were not stupid. They watched, they learned, they adapted. Tai continued, "We need to move our main base, and we need a TOV story for the dogs." Jin thought for a moment, then wrote, "What if we don't hide it? What if we show with them dogies acting strange, but make them think it's not communication?" The others looked at him with question marks in their eyes. Jin explained his idea. If the aliens saw dogs making unusual sounds, they might get suspicious. But if humans showed them that the dogs were just responding to stress or environmental changes, the aliens might lose interest. Ta nodded slowly. It was risky, but it might work. They didn't have long to wait. That afternoon, a silence patrol came to Jin's neighborhood. 3 tall, gray aliens moved between the buildings, their smooth faces showing no emotion. Each wore a device that allowed them to send text messages to human tablets. Jin, Sue, and Dai were sitting outside when they approached. Jin forced himself to stay calm. Dai growled softly, but Sue placed a hand on his back, and he quieted. One of the aliens stepped forward. Its device lit up, and Jin's tablet received a message. "Unusual C890 behavior, reported in TAS area." Jin nodded and typed back, "My doggy and others have been acting strange, since it will either change it." The alien tilted its head, a gesture they had learned meant curiosity or doubt. "XP lane, strange behavior." Jin typed, "Bar keying patty ordnance change. More howling. Dogs seem mysterious SED by atmospheric heat pressure." The lead alien turned to its companions. They made no sounds, but Jin could tell they were communicating somehow. Then it turned back. "Shoujo US." Jin nodded to Sue. This was dangerous, but necessary. Sue placed her hand on Dai's back and closed her eyes slightly. Dai began to make the series of unusual sounds they had practiced, a combination of barks, whines, and growls that did sound strange, but not necessarily like communication. The aliens watched closely. Jin held his breath. After Dai finished, the alien typed, "Other doggies doing diaz." Jin showed them videos they had prepared, other dogs making similar sounds, but in different contexts, some while eating, others while playing. The message was clear. These were just stressed animals making noise. The lead alien studied the videos. Then it typed, "Animal behavior changing due to our prescience. EXPCTE. Continue monitoring." Jin felt relief wash over him, but he kept his face neutral. The aliens turned to leave, but the leader stopped and typed one more message. "Give the ranges of humans with doggies must be reported. Large grow UVs, not paranoid." When they were finally gone, Jin let out a breath. Tai, who had been watching from a distance, came over. "They suspect something," he typed, "but they don't get a. Jin nodded. The silence had noticed their beast's strange behavior, but they didn't understand the meaning behind it. They didn't know that humans and animals were forming a new language right under their noses. But the aliens were watching now, and the resistance would need to be more careful. That night, Jin added a new lesson to their training program: how to make the dog's communication look natural and random to alien observers. The game had changed. The stakes were higher, and the silence was listening. 1 week after the alien visit, Jin sat in Hannah's small apartment. Papers and tablets covered the table between them. Hannah had been studying animal sounds day and night since the close call with the silence. "Look at this," Hannah's tablet read. She showed Jin a chart with sound waves. The lines showed different dog barks and howls. Jin studied the chart carefully. Hannah had marked certain patterns in red. These patterns appeared over and over in different dog sounds. Suddenly, Hannah's dog Moon started barking loudly at the window. At the same time, her cat hissed and ran under the couch. Jin felt it before he heard it, the low hum of an alien ship passing very close to the building. As the ship passed, Jin felt something strange at the base of his neck where the neural dampener sat, a tingling sensation, almost like a small electric shock. He looked at Hannah. Her eyes were wide. She had felt it too. When the ship moved away, Hannah grabbed her tablet and typed quickly, "Did you FEL-T8? The DAMPENER re-ACTD to the ship's engines." Jin nodded. He thought for a moment, then wrote, "The DAMPENERs must use sound waves to below CK our speech. The ship's engine is NTRFERD with them." Hannah's eyes lit up with understanding. If the dampeners used sound waves, then other sound waves might affect how they worked. Later that day, they met with Tai and 3 other resistance members in a small storage room. Jin explained what they had discovered. Todd looked skeptical but interested. "We need to test this," Todd wrote, "but carefully." They agreed to start experiments right away. For 3 days, they tested different sounds near the dampeners. Most had no effect. But then Hannah noticed something important. When Day made a very low growling sound at just the right pitch, the dampeners seemed to weaken for a few seconds. On the 4th day, they gathered in Jin's apartment for the big test. Sue sat with Dai in the middle of the room. Around them, Ta, Hannah, and 2 others waited anxiously. Sue placed both hands on Dai's head and focused hard. Dai looked into her eyes, then began to make a sound unlike any they had heard before. It was a deep, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate the very air. Jin felt the strange tingling at his neck again, but stronger this time. The dampener was reacting to Dai's sound. Sue nodded to her father. Jin took a deep breath and tried to speak. "Test," he whispered. The sound was small and rough, but it was there. His voice, after months of silence, Jin had spoken a word aloud. The others stared in amazement. The effect lasted only a few seconds before the dampener regained control, but it was enough. They had proof that the right sound could temporarily disable the alien technology. Tai was the first to recover from the shock. He wrote quickly, "This changes EVERYthing. But we need more power. One dog isn't enough for long conversations." Just then, They heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Everyone froze. Day's ears perked up, and he turned toward the door with a low growl. The footsteps stopped right outside Jin's apartment. Then came 3 sharp knocks on the door. A silence patrol. Jin signaled everyone to stay calm. He moved to the door slowly, trying to look normal. Behind him, the others quickly hid their research. As Jin reached for the door, Day suddenly made the special growling sound again. Jin felt the dampener weaken just as he opened the door to find 2 tall gray aliens standing there. Without thinking, Jin spoke one word: run. The sound of his voice shocked even him. For a moment, the aliens stood perfectly still, their smooth faces showing no emotion but their body language radiating surprise. In that moment of confusion, Ta signaled to Maru. The German shepherd lunged forward, barking loudly. The distraction worked. As the aliens stepped back, the resistance members slipped past them and scattered down different hallways. Later, regrouped in their underground base, Jin wrote what everyone was thinking. We tien speak again. Not afore long, but it's possible. Ta nodded and added, and ete silence, ye do isn't know how we did it. For the first time since the invasion, they had a real advantage, a way to fight back. The breakthrough had come, and now they needed to expand it. 2 weeks after their breakthrough, Jin stood on a rooftop in eastern Seoul. The night was clear and cold. Beside him, Tai checked his watch and nodded. It was time. Jin raised his hand, and Dae moved forward. The big dog looked at Jin, waiting for the signal. 3 blocks away, Jin knew Hana would be doing the same with her dog. And across the city, 20 other teams waited for the clock to strike 9. Jin lowered his hand. Dae lifted his head to the night sky and began to howl. The sound rolled across the city, deep and powerful. Soon, other howls joined in. From every direction, dogs called to each other through the night. To any alien watchers, it might look like animals responding to each other. But this was something more. This was the first test of the Howl network. Jin checked his timer. After exactly 30 seconds, he signaled Dae to stop. The dog went quiet immediately. Across the city, the other dogs fell silent too. Jin and Todd waited, counting silently. 1 minute later, a new set of howls began, this time from the western part of the city. The dogs there were responding, sending the message onward. Tae's face broke into a rare smile. The network was working. They had created a citywide communication system using only dog howls. Back at the underground base, Jin marked successful points on a large map. The room was crowded with resistance members, all eager to hear the results. 28 out of 30 points CCCESSFU. Jin wrote on a board for all to see. Medias SAG, Torre VLED Across Sezio in 12 minutes. People nodded in approval. Before the aliens came, this would have seemed slow. But now, it was revolutionary. They could send messages across the city without phones or radios. Hana stepped forward with new information. Viest Orias ULTs, waking multi IPL dogs howl together. Creates stronger EFEDCC on DAMP and ERs. This was the second part of their plan. Not just communication, but disruption. When 3 or more dogs howled together in the right pattern, they created what the resistance called voice bubbles, small areas where humans could speak for a short time. Sue, who had been working with younger children and their pets, raised her hand. Jin nodded to his daughter. She wrote, Sinel doggies work too. Different pitch, different EFFECT. This was new. So far, they had focused on large dogs with deep voices. If smaller dogs could help too, they could expand the network even faster. Todd unfolded a new map, this one showing the locations of alien command centers and patrol routes. He pointed to several spots and wrote, These are our priority targets. We need voice BVBLs HEREFOR PLNNing. The idea was bold but dangerous. They would position dog teams near key alien facilities. When needed, the dogs would create voice bubbles, allowing resistance leaders to speak and plan. As the meeting continued, Jin watched Sue working with Dai in the corner. His daughter had grown so much in these past months. Her connection with Dai was stronger than anyone else's bond with their animal. Sometimes it seemed like they could read each other's minds. Later that night, as they tested the voice bubble concept, Jin stood in the center of a small room. 3 dogs, Da, Maru, and a husky named Pal, sat in a triangle around him. On Ta's signal, all 3 dogs began to howl in a specific pattern. Jin felt the now familiar tingling in his neck. Then, as the howls reached a perfect harmony, the feeling changed. The dampener seemed to go completely dead. "Can everyone hear me?" Jin spoke clearly, his voice strong and sure. Around the room, people gasped. Jin was not whispering this time. He was speaking normally, his voice carrying to everyone. "The bubble works," Jin continued, amazed at the sound of his own voice. "How long can we maintain it?" Tai checked his timer. Almost 1 minute now, longer than before. For 5 precious minutes, they could speak freely. When the dogs finally tired and the dampeners reactivated, the room was filled with silent tears of joy and hope. That night, as Jin walked home with Sue and Dai, he looked up at the alien ships hovering over Seoul. The silence thought they had won by taking human voices. They didn't understand that on Earth, humans had never been the only ones who could speak. And now, the beasts were helping take back what was stolen. The silent ships moved differently now. Jin noticed it first. Instead of regular patrol patterns, they hovered longer over certain areas. They seemed to be listening. They know something is happening, Todd wrote during their weekly meeting. But they don't know what. The resistance had grown. More than 200 people now worked with the Howl network across Seoul. Voice bubbles appeared in new places every day. For brief moments, humans could speak again. But the aliens were not stupid. They watched. They learned. 3 days later, Jin was working with Sue and Da when Hana burst into the room. Her face was pale with fear. She held up her tablet. They 2OK5 doggies from CCSTOR2, Special Team of Aliens. Jin felt his stomach drop. Sector 2 was where they had set up a training center for smaller dogs. If the aliens were taking dogs, it meant they suspected something. That night, resistance members gathered in the underground base. The mood was dark. News had spread. A new kind of alien had arrived. The resistance called it the Hunter. Din's brother, who worked at the zoo, shared what he had seen. Hunter visitid zoo today. Studied wolves for HOURs. Took sound recordings. Jin and Tide exchanged worried looks. The hunter was studying animal sounds. It was only a matter of time before it discovered their secret. The next day, reports came in from across the city. The hunter was visiting places with many dogs, parks, veterinary clinics, even homes with multiple pets. Each time, it used special equipment to record and analyze sounds. Jin called an emergency meeting with Ta, Hana, and the other leaders. "We need to change our patterns," he wrote. "Use HFY into sounds, different timings." But it was too late. That evening, as Tai and Maru returned from a scouting mission, they were ambushed. 3 silent ships surrounded them in a small park. The hunter itself stepped out from one ship. It was taller than other aliens, with longer arms and a head that seemed designed for better hearing. It carried devices Jin had never seen before. Tai managed to send one quick message before they took him. "Captured. Hunter Hayes Memoir." The news hit the resistance hard. Tai was one of their best leaders, And Maru was not just any dog. He was specially trained for police work, and he knew all their signals. Jin knew what would happen. The hunter would study Maru, learn their methods, and find a way to track the Howl network. They needed to act fast. "We need to rescue them," Jin said to Sue as they created a voice bubble at home. "But it's too dangerous." Sue looked at her father with determination in her eyes. "Dai and I can help," she said. "We can make a bigger bubble than anyone else." Jin started to shake his head, but then stopped. Sue was right. Her connection with Dai was unique. During their last test, they had maintained a voice bubble for nearly 10 minutes, twice as long as any other team. The rescue plan came together quickly. Jin gathered 20 volunteers, each with their dogs. They would create a series of voice bubbles around the alien holding facility where Tai and Maru were kept. The night of the rescue was clear and cold. Jin, Sue, and Day took position on a rooftop across from the facility. Around them, other teams waited for the signal. Jin checked his watch. It was time. He nodded to Sue. Sue placed both hands on Day's head and closed her eyes. The connection between them seemed to grow stronger each day. Day began to howl, but this was unlike any sound he had made before. It was complex, layered, almost musical. Other dogs joined in, creating a wave of sound that washed over the area. Jin felt his dampener go completely dead. The voice bubble was forming, and it was bigger than any they had created before. "Now," Jin said, his voice clear and strong. "Team 1, move in." Across the street, 4 resistance members ran toward the facility. Jin could hear their footsteps, their breathing. It was working. "Team 2, create distraction," Jin said into a small radio they had found. In the old world, such technology would have been simple. Now it felt like magic. On the other side of the facility, more dogs began to howl. The alien guards moved toward the sound, just as planned. For 5 precious minutes, humans moved and spoke freely. They found Ta in a cell on the lower level. He was weak but alive. Maru was in a lab nearby, connected to strange machines. As they freed the dog, alarms began to sound. The hunter had returned early. "Everyone back to positions," Jin said into the radio. "Sue, we need more time." Sue nodded, her face tight with concentration. Day's howl grew even louder, and the other dogs followed his lead. The voice bubble held for almost 15 minutes, long enough for all teams to escape and return to safe houses. Back at the underground base, Jin looked at the rescued pair with relief. Tai was beaten, but his spirit was unbroken. Maru seemed unhurt, though more cautious than before. "What did they learn?" Jin asked during a voice bubble. Tai's voice was rough from disuse. "Everything. The hunter knows how we communicate now. It knows about the voice bubbles." Jin nodded grimly. They had won this battle, but the war had just gotten much harder. The silence now knew their secret, and they would do everything to stop it. 3 days after the rescue, Jin woke to the sound of ships. Not just the usual patrols, but dozens of them. He looked out his window and felt his blood turn cold. The sky was filled with silent ships, more than he had ever seen before. Sue ran to the window beside him. Even Dai seemed to sense the danger, pressing against Sue's leg and growling softly. Jin's tablet lit up with messages from across the city. The same thing was happening everywhere. The silence was moving in force. When Jin reached the underground base, he found it crowded and tense. People passed tablets back and forth, sharing news and fears. Tai, still recovering from his capture, stood at the center table with a grim face. "Operation Silence All." Tai's tablet displayed for everyone to see. "They are taking AL animals that can make complex sounds." Reports confirmed it. Across Seoul, the aliens were rounding up dogs. But not just dogs. They were taking cats, birds, even the monkeys from the zoo. Anything that could vocalize in complex ways. Jin watched as the map of Seoul filled with red marks showing where animals had been taken. The pattern was clear. The silence was trying to remove their ability to communicate. "What do we do now?" Jin asked during a voice bubble created by 3 dogs in the corner of the room. Tad looked older than his years. "They're one step ahead of us. They know what we've been doing." Hana joined them, her face showing a mix of fear and determination. "It's not just Seoul," she said. "My friend in Busan sent a message. It's happening all over Korea." As more reports came in, they realized the terrible truth. The Silence was implementing Operation Silence all globally. From London to Tokyo, from New York to Sydney, they were taking animals that could vocalize. The resistance leaders gathered in a small room. They needed a plan, and fast. "They can't take all animals," Jin said. "There are too many." "But they can take enough to cripple our network," Tai argued. As they debated, Sue slipped into the room. Jin started to send her out. This was no place for a child, but the look in her eyes stopped him. "I have an idea," Sue said softly during the voice bubble. Everyone turned to look at her. In these past months, Sue had shown wisdom beyond her years. "The dampeners use sound waves to block our voices," she explained. "But when enough animals make sounds together, it creates feedback that breaks the dampeners." Jin nodded. They knew this already. It was how the voice bubbles worked. "So what if we did this everywhere, all at once?" Sue continued. "Not just dogs, but all animals. Could we break all the dampeners?" The room fell silent as everyone considered this idea. It seemed impossible, yet it would need to be synchronized, Hannah said finally. "Every resistance group worldwide would have to coordinate, and we would need more than just dogs," Tai added. "We would need all kinds of animals." Jin thought of Bin's brother at the zoo. He thought of the reports about whales changing their songs since the invasion, about birds forming new flocking patterns. Maybe, just maybe, it could work. For the next week, the resistance worked day and night on Operation Beast Chorus. Using the Howl network, they sent messages across Korea. Other countries had developed similar systems. Slowly, the plan spread worldwide. Each resistance group would position themselves near dampener relay stations, the points where the alien technology connected. At exactly the same time, they would trigger every animal they could to vocalize. Jin worked with Sue and other children to create simple devices that could produce sounds that animals responded to. Hana coordinated with zoos and wildlife centers that had hidden animals from the alien roundups. The day before their plan was to launch, the hunter struck again. 3 more resistance members were captured, along with their dogs. The aliens knew something was coming. That night, Jin held Sue close as they looked out at the alien ships patrolling above Seoul. "Are you scared?" Sue asked. "Yes," Jin admitted, "but I'm hopeful too." Sue nodded and looked at Dad, who sat alert by the window. "The Silence thinks they understand our animals," she said, "but they don't. Not really." Jin smiled at his daughter's wisdom. The aliens saw Earth's animals as simple creatures, tools at best. They didn't understand the bonds that had formed over thousands of years between humans and their animal companions. Tomorrow, those bonds would be tested as never before. Tomorrow, the beasts would howl as one, and the Silence would learn that taking voices was not the same as taking hope. Dawn broke over Seoul with a red sky. Jin checked his watch. 6:00 a.m. In 12 hours, Operation Beast Chorus would begin. Around the world, resistance groups were making final preparations. Jin, Sue, and Dae made their way through quiet streets to their assigned position. They had chosen a small hill overlooking a key dampener relay station. A tall, silver tower the aliens had built 3 months ago. Similar towers stood across the city, across the country, across the world. Tai and Hannah met them there with 5 more dog handlers. Each person carried a small device Sue had helped design, a sound trigger that would help coordinate the animals. "All teams in position," Jin asked during a brief voice bubble. Ta nodded. as many as we could contact. Some were caught in last night's raids. The aliens had stepped up their efforts. More ships patrolled the skies than ever before. The hunters seemed to be everywhere at once, tracking and capturing resistance members. But it was too late to stop what was coming. As the sun climbed higher, Jin watched Sue sitting quietly with Da. Her hand rested on the big dog's head, their connection stronger than ever. Over these months, as humans lost their voices, they had found new ways to communicate, not just with each other, but with the animals who shared their world. At midday, a fleet of silent ships appeared overhead. The aliens knew something was happening. They could feel the tension in the air. "They're trying to scare us," Hana whispered during a voice bubble. "Stay calm." Jin checked his watch again. 5:30 p.m. 30 minutes to go. Around the world, resistance groups would be watching the time just as carefully. At 5:45, a silence patrol approached their position. 3 tall, gray aliens moved silently up the hill, devices in hand. They seemed to be scanning for something. Jin signaled everyone to stay still. Beside him, Sue held Da close, keeping the dog quiet with gentle touches. The aliens passed just 20 meters away. For a moment, Jin thought they would be discovered. But then the patrol moved on, disappearing over the other side of the hill. 5:55 p.m. 5 minutes left. Jin distributed the sound triggers. Each person knew their role. Some would focus on the dogs with them. Others would activate the triggers that would signal to animals in the surrounding area. Birds in trees, rats in sewers, pets in nearby houses, all would hear the call. 5:59 p.m. Jin looked at Sue and nodded. It was time. Sue stood and placed both hands on Da's head. The big dog looked up at her, trust and understanding in his eyes. Around them, the other handlers took similar positions with their dogs. 6:00 p.m. Across Seoul, across Korea, across the world, the beast chorus began. Dae was the first to howl, his deep voice rising into the evening air. The other dogs joined in immediately, creating a harmony that seemed to vibrate the very ground. The sound triggers activated, sending signals that only animals could hear. Birds burst from trees in sudden flight, their calls joining the chorus. From nearby houses came the sounds of pets, dogs, cats, birds, even hamsters and guinea pigs adding their voices. From the zoo came the roars of lions and tigers. From farms outside the city, cows and horses and sheep joined in. From the ocean, reports would later tell of whales breaching and singing with strange new patterns. The air filled with sound, a chorus unlike anything heard on Earth before. Animal voices from every corner of the world, rising together in harmony. Jin felt the dampener at his neck grow hot, then cold, then hot again. It was reacting to the sound wave pattern, trying to compensate. Around him, the others felt the same thing. Then came the feedback. Just as Sue had predicted, the dampeners couldn't handle the massive, synchronized animal chorus. The network began to fail. Jin felt a strange popping sensation at the base of his skull. Then something he hadn't felt in months, the full control of his vocal cords. "It's working," he shouted, his voice strong and clear without any voice bubble. Around him, others began to speak, to shout, to laugh. Their voices had returned. The dampener relay tower began to spark and smoke. Across the city, other towers did the same. The alien technology was breaking down under the assault of Earth's united animal voices. Above them, the silent ships started to move erratically. Later, they would learn that the aliens themselves were highly sensitive to sound. The beast chorus was more than they could bear. As humans worldwide regained their voices, they joined the chorus. Human and animal sounds merged into one massive declaration. Earth would not be silenced. By nightfall, the silent ships were gone from Earth's skies. Whether they would return, no one knew. But humanity was ready now, in a way they hadn't been before. Jin stood with Sue and Dai as the stars came out. Around them, people talked and laughed, using their reclaimed voices with joy and wonder. They took our voices, Jin said, putting his arm around Su. But our beast still howled. Su smiled and patted De's head. The big dog looked up at them both, somehow understanding that he had helped save his human friends. In the end, the silence had failed to understand one simple truth. On Earth, all voices matter. And when they rise together, nothing can silence them.